This past weekend, I finally caught up with 2020 and binged the new British show that everyone's been talking about, Ted Lasso. Multiple people had been nagging me for months to watch it, and so, finding myself a bit bored Friday night, I took the dive and signed up for Apple Plus. At least a 1-week free trial that I've already canceled. If you haven't seen it, it's good. A folksy, incessantly positive man from Kansas is hired to be the coach of an English Premier football team, despite having never coached, played, or even watched English football. He doesn't even know the rules. He had some success coaching American football teams, and he takes his hiring as a sign that the owner is thinking outside the box, looking for a creative motivator. In reality, she just got divorced and wants to run the team into the ground to cause her ex-husband the most pain possible. In other words, Ned Flanders meets Major League. If you're interested in a full review of the show, Father Tito and I just released an episode on our podcast where we get into a lot of the details of the show, so you can check it out here. But for the purposes of this video, I don't want to talk so much about the show as I do about the idea of Ted Lasso himself, namely his approach to life. Kill them with kindness. When I say that he is incessantly positive, I'm not exaggerating. The man does not seem to exhibit the ability to criticize someone or speak a mean word about them. He is thrown into a lion's den of players that hate each other, a diabolical boss that hates the world, and a rabid fan base that hates him in particular. And yet, he soldiers on. Not with his chin held high, holding back tears, but with a smile on his face, genuinely concerned about making their lives better. In one scene in the first episode, he walks into the locker room, only to be cussed out by the team captain. The player calls him names, makes fun of him, and just takes disrespect to a whole new level. But Coach Ted is unfazed. He doesn't yell back, doesn't correct him, doesn't even show any facial expressions of distress. The player leaves, he looks at his assistant coach, and says with a faint smile on his face, he thinks he's mad now. Wait until we win him over. I don't know how your mind works, but that's not how I think. If I were to uproot my entire life, taking a huge risk in my career, potentially jeopardizing my family, clearly doing something that was at least moderately doomed to fail, and the team captain on my very first day cussed me out and told me that I was good for nothing, I can tell you that I would not have a smile on my face afterwards. I might get angry, I might break down in tears, I don't know, but I most certainly would not be smiling, concerned with how I was going to make this other guy's life better. But that is Ted Lasso. For 10 episodes, he is the kindest, folksiest life coach you will ever meet, complimenting even his harshest critics and showing genuine concern for them. And at first, I couldn't stand it. Okay, that might be a bit of an overstatement. As a character, I love him, really. You just gotta watch the show to hear the ridiculous things that come out of his mouth. In one scene, he's asked if he believes in ghosts, and he says, I do. But more importantly, I want them to believe in themselves. Just fantastic. When I say that I couldn't stand his approach at first, what I mean is that I found it to be a shallow response to the world's problems. The character was clearly coming in the wake of an extremely divided 2020, and what I heard the creators of the show saying was the tired and old, why can't we all just be nice to each other and get along? At first, Ted seemed to me to be the epitome of our secular culture that just wants people to be nice, that just wants positivity all the time, even when the world is falling apart. It's the sort of attitude that comes off as particularly escapist to me and does real damage to people who are actually suffering injustices. When you choose to be positive and kind all the time, no matter what, you're probably hiding something serious that needs to be addressed. It's great to be nice and positive some of the time, but it's also okay to be angry at other times. It's okay to cry. It's okay to stand up for yourself and demand a little decency. Being positive all the time is not exactly healthy, and nice isn't a value I hold as particularly important. We don't worship a nice God. We worship a God that is loving in a self-sacrificial way. We worship a God who demands justice and is not afraid to punish people that bring evil into the world. When we look to the Gospels, Jesus is many things, but positive and nice are not exactly words I would use to describe him. He was willing to speak the truth even if it upset people, even if it caused controversy. And for the most part, this is kind of my approach to the world. This is the way that I treat my ministry here on this channel. I think that it is extremely important to be friendly and warm and have hope, and that's all great. But when it comes to justice, when it comes to the serious issues of the world, a Ted Lasso attitude just isn't my style. When faced with division of any kind, racism, sexism, abortion, the death penalty, self-destructive and lifeless atheism, any form of vile treatment of another person that ignores the truth of God, I'm not going to be concerned with being nice and encouraging. I don't think you need to be a jerk. There's no room for judgment and condemnations. But I also don't think that being nice is among the highest priorities. Truth, justice. In many situations, these things far outweigh being kind. And by the looks of the state of our world, I suspect that many people feel the same way. Far more than just being kind as a highest priority, more and more people are feeling inspired to speak truth to power, to call out injustice, to offer fraternal correction to their fellow citizens, sometimes in extremely direct and even hurtful ways. There's less of a care for feelings because truth is more important. For the most part, I would say, and I think most people would agree with me, that we don't need Ted Lasso. We need Jesus flipping tables in the temple, calling out the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. That is what the world needs, right? I'm not so sure anymore. While there is certainly a need for direct confrontation from time to time, and who am I to judge our Lord and Savior for resorting to these tactics, I'm not so sure that they are particularly effective for us. Believe it or not, most people do not respond well to direct confrontation. People's hearts are generally not changed by being yelled at or attacked. Speaking truth to power is very helpful for the powerless. It's cathartic and can be somewhat life-giving, but it almost never helps the powerful to live more authentic lives. It may get us what we want, sure, and justice is important, but it is almost always done at the expense of the powerful by defeating not just the evil, but people themselves. When I think about my own experiences of speaking truth to power, of being directly confrontational to another, I've come to realize that it has almost never resulted in true reconciliation, never resulted in justice for all. It has made me feel better, sure, but made the other feel worse and the division wider. Truly, it is a win-lose situation. But that is not what happens with Ted Lasso. As superficial as his character seems at first, his genuine concern for the people that hate him, his perseverance in chipping away at the walls they put up, and his constant, unrelenting positive affirmation actually does change people. It takes time and is a major struggle, sure, but the end result is a win for everyone involved. Now, I know what you're thinking. Ted Lasso is a made-up character. This is entertainment, it's not real, we cannot base our lives on it. I hear you. So let's look to a more real-world example. Daryl Davis. He's an American R&B and blues artist, a black man, and someone who attends KKK rallies. You heard that right. He is a black man that spends a good deal of time with white supremacists. Since he was 10 years old, he says, he's been fascinated with the question of why someone who doesn't even know him would hate him. In many ways, it's been his life's work to not only find out why, but to change people's minds one by one. His approach isn't unlike Ted Lasso. He doesn't respect everything that his enemy says or does, but he does respect the person in front of him and their right to have an opinion. He gives them a platform to speak, and in turn, he gives them an opportunity to get to know him. He doesn't condemn them, he doesn't speak truth to power, he simply befriends them to win them over. In his work for racial justice, he has befriended 20 Ku Klux Klan members and is indirectly responsible for more than 200 people leaving the Klan. Now, am I suggesting that all black people should attend KKK rallies? Am I saying that oppressed people simply need to be nice to their oppressors and stay quiet? Absolutely not. Particularly in the issue of racism. Minorities have a right to be angry, and any requirement that oppressed people simply make themselves vulnerable to their oppressors runs the risk of being dangerous and ineffective. We need them to speak truth to power. What I am saying, though, and oddly enough, what I took from Ted Lasso is this. Using forceful words and denouncing the evils of others is important for defending victims and might be all we can do in certain situations, but it is not the ideal. Hearts are not changed by being hated. If we want true justice, the sort of justice that not only protects the victim, but frees the oppressor from their cycle of violence and brings about reconciliation, there must be a part of us that actually cares about our enemies. As counterintuitive as it may sound, there is something about befriending our enemies, being kind to them, truly caring about their livelihood even though they hate us, that will pay off much greater in the long run than simply speaking truth to power alone. As Christians, our goal must be to defeat evil, not our enemies. In our pursuit of justice, there is a fine line between righteous anger that confronts our enemies with force and hatred that seeks revenge. As tempting as the latter sounds at times, as vile as our enemies can be, hatred will always be self-defeating. It destroys from the inside out and is always more hurtful to us than the ones we hate. Hatred is just not the answer. Destroying our enemy will never bring us the justice that we want. It will only repeat the cycle of violence. No, as Jesus tells us, there is only one way to truly defeat our enemies, and that is to love them, to win them over, to work as hard as we can to make sure that they are no longer our enemies at all, but our friends. Now, is it likely that we're going to convert every enemy through kindness? Probably not. Are we to always make ourselves vulnerable to those who can hurt us, continuing to let them abuse us? I don't think so. As I said, especially for people who are already oppressed or marginalized, any sort of requirement like this could only further their oppression. I don't think that kindness is the answer to everything, and don't wish that we could all just be nice to each other. But I do think that a little more of it couldn't hurt. The true beauty of Ted Lasso and Daryl Davis, the great witness that comes from the mouth of Jesus, is that an approach of kindness doesn't just offer the potential of freeing our enemies from their hatred, it frees us from ours as well.